I'm Braden Uppel, and my subject is Activism for Environmental Justice in Taiwan. So the thesis that I'm going to be exploring is that Taiwan's transformation from garbage island due to its environmental negligence in its past into a green, environmentally positive country was driven mainly by grassroots activism movements that have successfully challenged lots of industrial projects, and the citizens continue this fight while navigating through complex cultural and political pressures. And I just kind of really wanted to explore this as I'm very interested in certain companies like TSMC, which is a very major company dealing with these environmental issues as the current day even. Now, the outline for what I'm going to do is starting kind of just going through the timeline. So talking about the negligent past, so in the 1950s to 1970s, which we all know is during the KMT's rule, where the government actually acted with full kind of full priority on the economic growth of the country and really didn't care at all about the environmental effects from this, and this actually led to lots of pollution and garbage and creating Taiwan's kind of being known as garbage island, just kind of due to the governmental structures and just due to the martial law itself. Protesting would be very, very strictly enforced and it was just not a good time for that. However, we kind of see the start of activism when martial law is lifted in 1987, and it kind of allowed for citizens to actually start being able to actually speak out and against the government and these giant companies that are starting factories and all these things that are ruining the environment. And basically it just kind of allowed the local people to actually fight for their communities and its environment. Next, we kind of move into today and the modern movements, and kind of explaining how a lot of the youth of today are fighting against TSMC and other companies as well, and kind of the government too, just to protect both citizens' health, the environment's health, and even just Taiwan in general. A lot of what they're doing is ruining rivers and air quality, which yes, it's the environment, but it's also kind of just part of Taiwan. And also kind of exploring how there's a lot of cultural and parental pressures in the academic side of the world, which is kind of a stepping stone or as a roadblock that these kids have to move around in order to actually try to protest just in the culture of Taiwan. And then we'll move into the future and exploring how the youth are changing their forms of protest, it's kind of today, but it's also kind of exploring what are they going to do in the future as well, and also how they've kind of shifted the narrative of climate change and all these giant big ideas into everyday specific actions that make it so that it's an individual fight as well instead of just a big broader subject. And it kind of makes it so that each person feels more invested and actually is doing something each day that's helping, instead of just thinking about something in the future or something that is not really dependent on them individually. Now, the first source I want to use is Celia from 1975, and this will kind of just go through the past and kind of explain why Taiwan's in such a bad environmental state through the rule of the government. And again, it's just kind of the key points from it is that there's a economic priority on the government wanting to modernize and have economic growth, and there was just no thought about the environment and the impact it would have. And kind of one thing of it was that because they didn't really care about it, there were no really strong or even enforced environmental regulations and laws. And this allowed certain things like factories would end up in residential neighborhoods, and they would ruin the air quality, and they'd also ruin water quality. And the projects also were not built with the environment in mind, regardless of the people. So there would be lots of pollution in local rivers and the air quality as well, but it's just kind of ruining the land and as well as like the people that have to live there. And then another source would be Tang and Tang, which is kind of it's talking about how the starts of this activism. So we know martial law is lifted in 1987, and this allowed for the citizens to be able to actually protest and take action against these companies and actually speak for what they believed in and wanted. And one of the things was the self-salvation moment, where a local community was where the local community actually were blocking the construction of a factory, like physically blocking it in order to, like, speak their mind. And they did this because the factory would cause tons of pollution in their home, and it was built way too close to like the people. And then also one of the biggest wins for and like the first major win was in 1996 with the DuPont factory, where they protested their petrochemical plant, and it was just kind of the first, and they actually succeeded, and the company like receded from that original plan and took it out of where they were going to do it. And it just showed that like small, like native and local people could actually stop these big corporations and the government, and it was just a huge win that showed that. Another source was the Taipei Times, and it's about the environmentalists presenting 3 demands. So this is more of a modern talking about TSMC, but today's citizens are standing up against the TSMC factory expansion, which would be to grow it. Even though it already exists, they want to make it bigger, but that would just cause more and more pollution. And a lot of the people wanted to protect themselves, and a lot of it is like mothers wanting to protect their children's future. And so it's looking forward as well as just fighting for today's environment. And one of the key things is that it kind of shows how even though TSMC is a massive part of the Taiwanese economy and its global relevance, that they're still, like, the citizens are still fighting for the environment and the home instead of just making it a broad global thing. And then there's also like a push from grassroots groups to have clear and strict deadlines for companies. So there's like a 40% renewable by 2024 and 100% clean by 2030, just demands and things that they want. And they're just making it so that it can't be something the government just says they're going to do and then just kind of skips over it or pushes it to the side. And they also brought up that Taiwan has limited resources as a small little island, and that like they've had power and water shortages recently, and that it kind of just shows that there is a need for renewable energy, not just a want as, oh, we should move to better, cleaner energy. It's something that's actually really relevant to now, as there's already been, major events with this. And then another source would be Chang 2022, and this kind of again goes over how like the student activists have to use like different styles of protest. Like in Western, a lot of it is kids skipping school to protest, but that's really disapproved and looked down by parents, teachers, and just the culture in general. And there's a lot of focus on like getting good grades. So then another thing they did is they do quick in-school little protest songs, do signs during breaks, and then so they're still able to like fight for what they believe in and fit within the culture. And then also talking about how they're shifting that narrative again from the large ideas down to the small, like everyday things. My last source is Chen 2019, and it kind of explores the media and how today's citizens view climate change and how they care about it, and how climate change in Taiwan is seen as more of a now problem than a future problem, like it is seen in a lot of places. And so it's something that they really want to like deal with today, and the people actually feel personally obligated to actually help the environment. In conclusion, just, I think that from the bottom up, grassroots like movements, citizens have really shaped it. It's not really come from the government, it's come from the people, and that it's really been an amazing change from that label of garbage island, and it just kind of shows the strength of the citizens and also how they've been able to like overthrow the companies and fight even with cultural and parent pressures, and they just kind of find ways to do what they really want to do for the environment.